popcorn. We are two niggas spoiling movies. Yeah. Brandon Collins, that's me, and Justin Brown for your movie needs. Media popcorn. Woo! You haven't seen it, well, we're gonna spoil it. Spoil it in your face. That's your warning. So if you get pissed, it's all your fault. Woo-hoo. Woo-hoo.
Hello, medium popcorn listeners. This is Tati's Take, where I give you my thoughts on a movie or an episode of the podcast that I am not on. And so I try to do it in 20 minutes or less. We're working on it. We've been hitting about 30 minutes. But nonetheless, here I am. So thank you for listening again. So today I am giving you my take on Disney's The Little Mermaid 2023 live action, starring Halle Bailey. I know Brendan has a hard time pronouncing her name, but I don't. And Melissa McCarthy and a whole slew of other people. So Brendan and I got to see The Little Mermaid in a special viewing for critics, and I will say that initially I was a bit indifferent. The Little Mermaid is not necessarily my favorite Disney princess, not that I have many. But one of the things that I do really enjoy about the animated version is the camp that comes with it. And when I say camp, it's not like the team of people. I mean like the actual campiness of The Little Mermaid. And I think a lot of that in the original animated Disney movie. I want to be very clear that we're talking about Disney version, not all the other side versions of it. And so that animated movie had a lot of inspiration from a lot of different cultures, including the LGBTQ community. And specifically, Ursula the Sea Witch was designed after a drag queen named Divine. And so we know the Caribbeanness of Sebastian. And other than that, everything is pretty much white-centric in the animated version. And the music is really good. The voices were really good. And for what it was at the time, it really saved Disney from pretty much going under. And so I think a lot of people are very married to the original animated Disney classic, The Little Mermaid. So when they announced that it would be getting a live action, initially I was surprised to hear The Little Mermaid would be getting a live action remake. Just given that something like The Lion King, while is one of my favorite animated Disney movies, actually didn't do too well in a quote live action, because that's also CGI X amount. And so I worried about the actual campiness of it. You know, it's a mermaid. Mermaids really aren't real. Spoiler alert. And just Sebastian and just how that would be drawn out, or in this case, how would they marry all these things? Then as time progressed and we got the casting, and of course the internet blew up with Halle Bailey being cast as Ariel, and how would it work, and white people were in their feelings, and I'm going to stay as far away from that debate as possible because I don't, have a lot of thoughts. If you'd like to hear them, definitely give us a call, send us a message, and you can actually DM me, or let's hash it out, either on the Medium P podcast, social media, or directly at Boricua Collins on Instagram. I digress. So I walked into this movie a bit indifferent because I don't necessarily care for Ariel as a princess, but I respect the sort of barriers that the animated film did break at the time. And so I was actually excited for if someone was like a similar sentiment. So maybe I did have some expectation, but indifferent nonetheless. I could care less that it was Halle Bailey cast. The whole cast I thought, initially was fairly cast, given the voices and the talent that's needed, because singing is pretty much mostly done by Ariel. And then Ursula has a song and Sebastian has a song, and that's kind of it. And then in this one, there will be just a little bit more singing. There will be original songs, obviously, to make a case for an Oscar. Nonetheless, there are some changes to the storyline, and so Ariel is not a 16-year-old girl coming out at like her special reveal, similar to a debutante or a quince or Sweet 16, right? And her objective is not solely to find a human to be in love with. So it still gives very much the coming of age of a young woman or young adult stepping into that new space, and then still having a parent around, telling you that you're not an adult and still treating you like a child. And so I really appreciated that change, and the fact that Ariel is not even trying to pursue Eric, although that love story is still kind of sort of there. They're very much in like. Um, but her just really coming into her own and just saying like, I'm interested in this thing. I need to pursue it. I need you to respect me, and really finding her way to be assertive. Um, and so there's a coral moon, and King Triton's daughters, which represents all the different seas, are part of like this committee. And I really like that change too, because before they were just there, just flaunting abs, singing about Ariel, and then we lost them. So, he has all these daughters. What are they? And they're also different and reflective of what would be the human culture in that near those areas. Um, One of the things that quickly threw me off, and actually, small spoiler. No, I can't talk about it. But there is another movie that predominantly takes place underwater that has a very similar um, issue. And so while all these effects look great, they're not 100% there yet, because they have to marry the digital and the human aspect. And so things like hair floating in the water um, really kill the vibe. Um, Having to soften up the edges, and so it feels fake, even though they're real people, but it doesn't feel fake enough. So it's that lack of commitment of either fully going all the way or not. And I think that's the problem you would have. But given that Disney also does Avatar, I was like, well, they shouldn't have this much of an issue, right? So not sure, why the hair is the thing that really took me out of it. And if you've seen it, let me know. If you have not seen it, let me know when you do. So there's that. And I think that there are a couple of voices that are so synonymous now that it's really hard to not think of the actual human voice actor. And so Aquafina plays Scuttle, and Scuttle is this like really sort of dopey, ditzy seagull who is like a little bit like Ariel's guru. She goes to Scuttle for advice on human things, and kind of like the encyclopedia. Um, in any case, it's just Aquafina in her New York accent. And so, it's hard to not hear that. Um, a- David Diggs as Sebastian is interesting. And I would say it definitely wasn't my favorite voice acting. I feel like maybe they could have picked someone else who had a native Jamaican accent, just because if the accent feels a little forced. Um, so all of that going on, the changes are small and they're subtle enough where it doesn't completely change the storyline or the setting. So most of that stays the same, but just progressive enough. And so I really hope that, the audience shifts into giving it a chance, because it is empowering for, young people, particularly young ladies who might be going through this, and finding your voice and learning to take space and make space, and really just, finding that, boss bitch attitude. The singing from Halle Bailey was, I think, phenomenal. Just subtle enough changes where you knew it's her, and there's a separation between the original singing and Halle's version. It didn't have too much of an R&B flair, so if anybody's wondering if that goes down that route, it doesn't. It still stays very classical, which is pretty good. But Halle Bailey is a great singer, so I really wasn't worried in that respect. I was worried about Melissa McCarthy as Ursula. Now, do I think Lizzo would have been a better Ursula? I don't know. But I will say that while Melissa McCarthy kind of fits the bill visually, um, and she's doing her best. I know she's not like super vocally trained or singing forward, so I do want to take that into consideration, because if I started singing right now, I'm sure you'd all stop listening. But I don't think her voice had the power that was needed to really convey Ursula. Ursula's sort of sarcasm and range. Melissa McCarthy's very funny, we know that. But as far as the energy that Ursula brings, it needed to be deeper. It needed to be, I think, a tad more soulful. But she does do a decent job. I just don't think that this was really acting for her. I think it was more emulating something that already existed, which is a little bit different from everybody else's performance, because they're actually acting in these roles. But let's be real, Ursula's the best thing about about the Little Mermaid Disney version. But all in all, I would say when they are on land, it feels like a set. And so it is giving a little bit of a Disney movie, just with obviously billions of dollars behind it. And I would say my rating overall is going to be a medium. Now, do I think it could have been worse? For sure. Because that second Alice in Wonderland was wild, or first one. I don't even remember anymore. But I definitely think they could have done better. There's times where like the costumes are really good, but the hair is not so great, and their wigs and extensions and CGI and all this stuff. But it's like, y'all could do better. It feels like a stage play that was being recorded. And if this is any indication of what the future ones might look like, then I have questions. They made subtle changes to the live action of Mulan, where they really respected the culture that Mulan was representing while still making it progressive. I recognize it was mostly humans in that particular movie, and they chose not to cast any of the fantasy animal characters that had existed in the animated one. So you can't do that with Little Mermaid because, it's under the sea. But when they do get on land, I don't know, if this, like I said before, if there's any indication of any future ones, or even like Hamilton, oof. But yeah, so that's it for Tati's take. Definitely got to do this one in 20 minutes or less, and so we're definitely getting better. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.
Medium popcorn, bullet in your face. That's your warning. So if you get pissed, it's all your fault.